Marvelous. Thank you so much. And thanks to Mirek and Jana for putting the conference together and for keeping this panel so nicely compact because effectively, we know each other with Milan. We are working in the same project, but it was very nice to discover Mark and actually the topics that are very similar, just sounding similar in a different context. So in any case, I would like to point to the attention to the reception of metal at the end of the 1980s and early 1990s, while keeping an eye on the issue of shaming and especially class shaming during the post-socialism. It is something that I have tried to investigate in a book that I was putting together from another project 2 years ago, and or 3 years ago already, that's tried to sum up, let's say, the cultural historical perspective on class building in the Czech post-socialism, meaning experiences of music, youth, and class, which may be kind of concepts that are familiar to those of us who have been studying cultural studies in the late, let's say, 1970s, 1980s British perspective. So trying to bring this kind of questioning to the issues of let's say, cultural histories of early post-socialism. Why I believe the middle class is like an important and the most important, let's say, bearer of the meanings in the Czech post-socialism. It is that it has been understood as a sort of a backbone narratively, as a sort of a hegemon of the post-socialist society, as a stabilizer of the new, let's say, capitalist and liberal democracy regime. How the class can be understood, so in accordance with let's say historical, cultural historical perspective, starting from the 60s on, I tried to understand it as a process of formation and disintegration of a social relationship. So going back, to Marx and Weber, but of course to E.P. Thompson, who will be the let's say the main theoretical perspective for this case. And the issue of class shaming and the sort of dialogical interaction between the classes on, let's say, those narrative discourse principles go back to the cultural sociology of first, let's say, French Bourdieu-inspired English sociology of Beverly Skeggs. So that's how it comes. What is theoretical background? I will be trying to speak very briefly about music critiques and discourse practices around metal, and I'll also start at the end of the 1980s. That I believe are a very important period for understanding of what was happening after 1989-90. And trying to investigate if this kind of stupid and primitive music by principle, as one of the music critiques of this period has named it, is what is the fundament of such understanding, and how can it be understood through, let's say, the lived experience of the people taking part in metal scenes of the 1980s, but also, let's say, from the middle, meaning from those gatekeepers, music critiques, and people who are somehow trying to channel those experiences to the wider public. So okay, that's a classical example of a moral panic of the late state socialism, or let's even perestroika period and it's a very well known article from the party newspaper Rudé Právo from 1988, the so-called Cult of Death and Violence, where the main argument of Ladislav Urban trying to depict a let's say how fans of the extreme metal, black metal band called Thor misbehaved at the concert in August 1988 in Bratislava. And basically the points are very similar to what Milan was speaking about. So it is basically violence, the allegations of fascism, and of course the reflections of the satanic panic. So basically linking these three let's say motifs together is a sort of discursive basis of what was how say metal was condemned in this very period, which is very interesting that it is the same period as of perestroika, basically, that as Milan has shown, there was also an understanding of metal as a sort of culture from below, being linked to the future working class and so on. So that was basically an idea that both of those, let's say, types of discourses, the one trying to moralize and the other one trying to understand, were present at the time. And it's basically a starting point of how the reception of metal, in particular extreme metal, continued throughout the last years of the 80s and the beginnings of the 90s. I would like to point especially to the misrecognition of understanding of let's say metal and heavy metal and extreme metal fans as being and directly linked with the working class, that we can see already since the last third of the 1980s. Also, well, for example, visual artists such as those linked with the very well-known band Masters Hammer. But also, for example, on the right side, also people linked with, well, sort of a criminal underworld linked with extreme metal and also hardcore punk bands such as Suicidal Commandos, Johnny Chaos on the right side. So there's basically everything. Yeah, we can see that it would be very difficult to draw a nice and clean working class picture for the late 1980s metal in Czechoslovakia. One of the very interesting sources for this kind of discursive material comes from summer 1989, where one of those magazines focusing on popular music called Melodie has published a special issue on metal, where it has interviewed three main, let's say, protagonists of three bands, one, let's say, heavy metal one, and two extreme metal ones, one, let's say, heavy metal, one thrash metal, and one black metal. I would just try to show you one of the examples of what kind of narrative practice was used there. And there was definitely an issue of discussing the tolerance of metal and the, let's say, of heavy metal from the mainstream and also from the, let's say, the metal fans towards the mainstream. So there was this kind of dialogical perspective being discussed. And one of the reactions that was let's say very, I would say, yeah, a strong one, was the one by Aleš Brichta, a singer of the already mentioned thrash metal band Arakain of the time, saying, okay, that there is this kind of double standards of especially in relation to the violence. So if there is some sort of violence going on at what he puts here, a brass band concert, and everybody say, wow, that was funny, Vašek trashed the bar. But when it is something happening at the metal concert, now it is, oh, what kind of culture is that? That's a fascism, and I don't know what else. So there is basically this kind of double standard that Aleš Brichta pointed to, but at the same time, he has explicitly discussed the issues of violence and fascism, which at the end of the 1980s were very importantly discussed also in relation to metal, as we have seen all this kind of moral panic coverage from Bratislava, but also in several other sources, some of which can be linking together extreme metal fans with football hooliganism and the nascence of the right wing or the far right racist skinheads. So that's where Aleš Brichta, let's say, defense is somehow double-binded, because at the same time he was very close to where those different subcultures met, and especially in July 1989. with the testimonies of several far-right racist actors, with the experiences of far-right hooliganism, of yes, some parts of extreme metal, so very close to fascism. So that's well, one of those let's say allegations we'll start with, but also you can see there was now the pictures I have been going through in a very nice book with pictures by a photographer of the 1980s punk scenes and also focusing at the very end of the 1980s also with the extreme metal. So it's the pictures by Stepan Stejskal, and we can see that there was, especially in these extreme metal concerts, there was a large crowds of, okay, we were speaking about male fans already throughout this conference, but also very young ones, and that's the concern we have been also discussing in relation to Horká kaše, so the movie, the Czechoslovak movie from 1988, saying that okay, the last attempts to somehow channel this kind of future of the working class in Czechoslovakia in a worker state in something, let's say, not so political, some sort of let's say non-problematic pastime would be also to allow them some sort of autonomy within the extreme metal concerts and practices. So we can see, okay, the pictures from 1988 to 1989 with okay, from nowadays with let's say very fetishistic paraphernalia of patches and t-shirts and so on at the time. But nevertheless, I consider it very important that it's kind of what I put here as a narrative basis for the post-socialist critique on stupid and primitive music by principle has to do also a lot with the age and with the moralizing of the age. So with the okay 1980s bending over towards the 1990s, we can see a enormous influx of let's say first records, visual materials, and everything else. That at the same time, as we were discussing in the morning, maybe this is the real golden era of at least on the level of the production.
Ondřej, on this, sorry to interrupt you, we still see the first slide. I'm not sure if
you
moved already during the slides.
I did. How come? So maybe I can try to go very fast through those slides like this.
Yeah, now it works.
But you don't see it in okay. And if we see this way, how does it work? Now, what do you see? You don't see. Aha. So I cannot make it big. It doesn't matter. So okay, I can at least show you some pictures I've been showing about this stupid and primitive music and young kids basically on the pictures. So sorry that you couldn't see it, because those are I would say very nice one and important ones. Early 1990s boom of production of metal and heavy and extreme metal also, and also of the musical critique. So that's one of my sources from this 1990s evaluation of metal, which is the book of the interviews with a very prominent critic of the 1980s music, popular music and subcultural music called Josef Vlček. And another one, Sondy do popu a roku, so let's say the chapters about pop and rock by Ivan Poledňák and Ivan Safourek, who were the people linked with at the end of the 1980s, especially with the new wave music and post-punk, leaning gradually into the electronic dance music in the early 1990s. And what really was stunning for me, that in the chapters dedicated to the metal music, they were very negative, and especially considering, okay, that, and hopefully you can see the quotations directly in front of you. Heavy metal is music that you do not need a high IQ to listen to, and ultimately you do not even need it to produce it. It gives you a certain power, and nothing is as ridiculous as 48-year-old figures performing smoky village metal after parties. So it's putting together again a very, very condemning picture on metal, on the intelligence of the listeners and producers, but also evoking a certain empowerment and let's say age or generation perspective. What is this in this very chapter of Poledňák and Saforek very interesting also that they are trying to put such a picture of metal that it is a rigid, strict, austere, serious, and it is incapable of any innovation. And they would question, will it ever change in 1992? So it's effectively it changed afterwards, and we can see that most of these condemnations that when trying to wrap up during the perestroika period, we can try to put them or understand them in a way of understanding the malfunctions of the socialist society and putting them in relation to the moral panics, partly transferred from the West, but concerning about this kind of future of the working class that we were discussing before. And there's this issue of tolerance and intolerance, but also a defense against demonization that was partly present also in the reviews such as Pelodier. What is definitely changing in post-socialism is this kind of moralizing economies. That metal in writings of Poledňák, Saforek, Vlček, and the others is understood as a music for unreasonable people. So the people who are not intelligent enough, who are linked with some sort of herd mentality. They are infantilized. They are primitive, vulgar, but very importantly, they are linked with low-income audience. So being, not anymore future of the working class, but those left behind. Yeah, those people who are somehow not enough or competent and willing to adjust to the new liberal democracy and capitalism, living mainly in the rural areas. So altogether, metal in the early 1990s is or evaluated from and definitely we can say that my choice of sources is somehow arbitrary, but in those two cases I was trying to focus on metal is functioning as a scapegoat in this kind of class-based condemnation. What is definitely left out of this picture is export of the Czech metal of the several bands, be it heavy metal, be it that was already active since the 1980s in the, let's say, European or even transnational scene, and extreme metal since the last third of the 1980s becoming an important one. Also, festivals of the early 1990s, as Petr was mentioning, also from example of Punch and Stench performing in Czechoslovakia before Austria and so on. So somehow the scene managed to become not as rigid as one of those critics would point to. Another one would be let's say contemporary topic or contemporary concept of crossover, so mixing metal with other genres, be it, for example, hip hop, or be it electronic dance music, such as in the case of Ministry. That to the difference of most of the, let's say, extreme metal bands, it was understood as very, very positively and very, I would say, exception to the rule, that it is bringing a completely new and fresh winds to the form that is already obfuscated. So this is it. I really apologize that you did not see the beginnings, because there was so many nice pictures that I've kept for myself, but you should have said it before. So thanks a lot.